force to be reckoned with. She has such a great insight on personal branding and on branding. She's worked with corporations and businesses, and she really loves to help people connect with their brand and with their message. Elena, I'm really excited that you're here.
Thanks for having me.
There'll be so much value for you guys. So get your notebooks and your pens out. I know how incredible you are, but it would be really cool to hear throughout your journey in this world of marketing and branding, what are some of the things that you developed in your life that you think help you with your job right now?
That's a great question. I think much like the branding that we're talking about, I think doing my own personal brand work, developing my own values and purpose helped me in doing the work that I'm doing today, whether working with brands that operate across North America or individual brands or an individual that's looking to build their personal brand. It's important for me to know and operate from my values. I think has been the biggest lesson in the last couple of years for me. It's really easy to come up with a great list of values and then just tuck them away in a drawer and never look at them again. So it's really about, there's a term called like operationalizing your values, associating behaviors with those values. That's probably been the biggest thing that's helped me in the last couple of years.
Is your values and strong sense of that. So where do you think that the strong sense of values comes from for you?
I think in a certain point in my career, I had this kind of feeling a little bit lost of like, I didn't really know what the purpose was of what I was doing and how I could bring value into it. There's a lot in there around imposter syndromes and things like that, where you just start to, and a lot of poor beliefs around worth. And so I think it was through that exercise and just trying to, so when you feel that turmoil and kind of internal pull of like, where am I going? What am I doing? That's when the importance, I think, of just doing that work of identifying what my values are to be able to operate from there, I think is really why it's so important.
That's so good. And I think there's probably a lot of people watching. You said it, but it's such a powerful thing, the imposter syndrome and how that can really take people out of the game. So maybe just talk about what had helped you to just fight that.
Sure. So I have this unique career trajectory where I've been with a company for a very long time. And I think for people that have either experienced that or potentially work for themselves, you sometimes don't get a lot of feedback from other people, or you're in a bit of a bubble, let's call it. I think there was a lot of connections and patterns between that. So for me, I actually started to volunteer within the marketing community in the city that I live in. And I sit on the board, I still do, with them and contribute. So partially it was expanding my network of marketers that I would chat with, and just all of a sudden would see how people would react to the work I was doing or the ideas I was coming up with. And there were almost kind of foreign reactions that I wasn't getting in my everyday life. And so it was a combination of that, and then a combination of sending out, and it's part of the personal branding exercise, is sending out a list of very simple questions to a group of friends and peers and getting that response back. And what's so amazing with that exercise is seeing patterns in the responses amongst very different people in your life. And so you start to see yourself how other people are seeing you, you see yourself how other people are seeing you, and you start to believe it. I think that's the key in it. So it was already there, is just, I think we get in our heads and in this negative, self-talk, and the imposter syndrome sets in, and which kind of starts to erode in what you really feel your values are. And if you're just so focused on your skills and not your value of what you're bringing to your job or to your clients or to your consumers, that was the key. And that was honestly for me a really big turning point in my life, and really changed the direction of how I operate within the companies I work for and the brands I work with. Yeah.
That's a really good exercise. I think it's cool when someone sends it to you, if you get them to email it or whatever, I'm sure, because you can actually read it and look it over. Because how many times people tell you things all the time, but you don't receive it. Do you find, or you don't like it, but actually seeing it on
totally. Yeah. And I think I have gone back to that list sometimes where it reminds you. And I think people, even some of the people on the list that I sent, these were people that are very close to. Other people were just like business contacts. Like they weren't people that really knew me on a personal level. And that's part of the exercise. is you share it with like peers within your industry, but getting it even from people that really well and having it documented in an email or written or whatever, you do have something to go back to. And I have throughout the years, you go back to it and it validates, or it helps remind you, everybody else believes this about me, so why can't I? And so it is a daily practice to rewire, undo the wiring that we've done to ourselves for so many years, and the thoughts and the negativity. And so it is these are little hacks that help you. I mean, we can scroll through Instagram and get like the inspirational stuff all day long, but it's so much more powerful when it's directed specifically to you from someone that you either respect, love, or all of it.
And knows you. That kind of goes to that place of like how important it is to surround yourself with people that push you and that challenge you. And do you have something like that in your life that really push you?
I definitely do. I think everyone needs that. You don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of yes people that are just constantly, maybe their intentions are probably really good, but they're not helpful in the bigger picture. I surround myself with people that we can have great challenging conversations, and people have changed my mind on a lot of things. I've changed people's mind on a lot of things, and just it's those safe environments to be able to have those hard conversations sometimes too, right? Or if you don't want to hear it too. Yeah, I think it's a key, and especially in business. Yeah. Any type of business, I think you have to surround yourself with people that are going to, in essence, make you better. People that are just saying yes to you all the time are not going to help you grow and become your best in what you're doing.
Sometimes, like you said, it's hard to hear not the yeses, and to hear the, oh, you probably could have done this a bit better. But those are the things that make you grow. So how do you probably welcome that? I'm sure at this point.
It's hard. As much as I can appreciate and see the good in it, it's still really difficult. I'd say, I think early 2020, late tail in 2019, I made it one of my personal mantras to listen more and not react. The classic respond and don't react. I'm very good at reacting very quickly. It's difficult for me. It's not easy. I welcome it, but it's a constant battle to just absorb it, listen, take it in, respond. A brilliant strategy a friend of mine taught me this year was the pause. Just pause, and you don't always have to have a response. So it's this year I actually applied that a lot, where I would just say, I'm going to get back to you in 24 hours, or I will, let me sit on that, let that marinate, and I'll get back to you. And so in that pause that you're creating, you can create the calm and to allow to absorb things versus just that reaction. The pause is my big growth of 2020, and taking it into 2021.
That's really good. People need to hear that, because sometimes it's, you know what you need to do, but you're like, what is a practical step to doing that? Because I know in my head that I just need to absorb it and take it, but I want to be right, or I know for me, sometimes I'm challenged with that. It's, you don't always have to be right. And sometimes you have to take that in and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to think on that and not just react. So I think that's really good and very helpful. I know a little bit about the dynamics of your life, but how would you say Ellen is Greek? So like, how would you say like culturally that played into some of those things for you?
Well, the reactiveness is totally Greek. I don't want to, generalize the whole culture, but being Greek, I think anyone that has, and this is something that's being listed in 2021 as a key skill that employers are going to be looking for, is just being able to work with different cultures and understand that there are different cultures and differences. You don't have to be of a different culture, but I think it's having that open-mindedness of it. So I think having this duality to my being has just always helped me throughout my career. I think it's just, I have maybe a different perspective and expanded view. I can recognize how different people can be and how different people can react to things. So as a marketer, that's a really good, I think, skill to have, in that, to just, you can put the same thing in front of people and they'll react differently, absorb it differently. Yeah, I think it's been something that's really helped me throughout my career, and my life. But yeah,
I know Elena's mom too, and I know like she's a very just direct person, and I think that can be a bit of a skill. And I know it can definitely be something that goes a long way in your career, when you're decisive and when you can say, nope, that's not working, or yes, that is. And so I'm sure you get a bit of that.
I definitely do. And I would say that is definitely a part of my heritage. Growing up with strong Greek people around me. I can say it can be great, and it can also, I think, as a woman too in a leadership role, and I'm in an industry that's very male dominated. Sometimes it can be labeled as aggressive, or so. I think there's in all these ways, there's a way to do it that's constructive, and it's just about communication. I think Brene Brown does a really good job at providing. I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. I would say Dare to Lead is a must read book for any person in leadership or a business. And she provides some really great tools and tactics on how to just better communicate, I think, in those scenarios. I would say maybe Brene Brown's had a bigger influence on me than my Greekness has.
But that's good though. And almost there's things that are woven into our fabric that we don't even realize. And then you're like, okay, because like you said, being able to have that perspective and how important being inclusive is, and just like taking a minute to think that not everyone thinks how you think is very important. And like you said, it's very important in your branding and your marketing to even just say, okay, I have all these things, but then Brene comes around and just puts it in perspective for you. Okay, this is what you
Totally. Yeah, she did that for me.
Great. When you're working, you talk a lot about values, but when you choose to align with a company, what are some of the values that are important to you and your personal brand?
I think the realness, so authenticity, being real, inclusivity, obviously, I think that's something really big for me, and value in the product or the service. Yeah, if I think of some of the top brands that come to mind that I even admire as a consumer, but also as a marketer, it's really just that. I think it's just people, including myself, I think everyone just got really sick of the salesy, overly just curated, kind of glossy brands out there that are just pushing stuff down your throat. And I know authenticity is a huge buzzword, has been thrown around for the last couple of years, but I think that's truly it. And I think for me, brands that consider the community local, whatever local may mean in that sense, is important to me as much as possible. And especially in the climate of the last year, I think this is more important than ever. Yeah, sustainability. I think it's all these things are important to me.
As people watch, it's really important that those things, when to take something on and when not to, like it helps guide you in your decisions and being consistent as well, even within a brand, like working for a brand as well.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think the exercise of establishing your values, your personal values and your professional values are going to be the same. They should be, realistically. There might be a few variations, but at the core, your values are your values, I believe. They really are, for me, I see them as a guiding light that helps you make the decisions on who you're going to align with, which brands you might take on to work with, or who you may decide to partner with, or which clients you might want to work with, because client might come knocking on your door and you might just be so not aligned that it's better for you in your sanity and your internal kind of peace to just say, we're not the right fit. It's much like when you break up with someone, it's not you, it's me. And it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. I think we live in a culture where saying no is not something that's very much promoted, and where it's all about yes, 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 and it's money, and it shouldn't be viewed that way. And I think being true to your values and living in your values will actually pay tenfold in the long run. So the brand game is a long play, and so I think that's hard sometimes for people because they want immediate results. But I think if you look introspectively and back over years, you'll see how it all played out.
That long game is so good, especially right now. Like I've consumed a lot of content and courses and this and that, and there's so much of that idea of like instant gratification and like instantly making money. And when you do that, I think you miss out on what it's all about. Who are you serving? Who are you helping? That's not like, it's not about all of the money. Yes, you need to monetize and create a business for yourself. But that long game, I think, is really hard for people right now to wrap their head around. I agree.
There's this amazing study out of the UK. I won't get into all the details. Maybe we'll attach some resources just to guide people to it. And it's really in the marketing world. It was really one of those world renowned studies that had never really been done around short-termism and long-termism in branding and marketing. And these two researchers had identified that what the balance is. And so I think it's a 60-40 or 70-30, but the long play is the one that you should be investing more of your time and efforts into. So whether again it's your own personal brand or your business, the long-term play, it's just the long-term play doesn't show the ROI instantly. So you invest time or money into it, it's not going to equate to dollars right away. And that's very difficult. Even for me, I've been doing marketing for a very long time for brands. Most people want to say, well, I spend $1, I want to see $5. And it just doesn't work that way. But it's a good, even at a really high level thinking, to just say the short term, and they've got this graph that just shows it's just little spikes, but there's never a long-term growth. Whereas the long-term branding, building on the brand, is really what's sustainable. And they've got some great examples, and it might be a little bit too nerdy and data-based.
But I think it's good. I think we need to have that, because I know for me, I'm like, I'm not going to go find it, but if you put it for me and it's helpful, I take your word for it.
I'll share like the highlights.
Maybe we could just sum it up and put the highlight reel for any creatives on here watching. I'm just kidding. No, I think along with you that it's like that instant money or instant success, like it's not sustainable, and you may do well in the short term, but it's developing something, and it really goes hand in hand with yourself. It's a process. All of these things are processes to your internal branding in order to be able to put it out there. Because even now you're like, oh yeah, I'm working on pausing, and it's all these things that you can't instantly just have something change. You got to work on it. So I love that. Elena, like that was so helpful. And I think that people will get a lot from that the whole value system is amazing. And if you guys like that, and I know those of you that have decided, hey, I want to keep this stuff and watch it over, Elena has some amazing tips and strategies, because she's a strategy queen, on some of these ideas around values and things that she's talked about. So I'm excited for you to get that, and you guys all should be getting that, because I think it's going to help push your personal brand to the next level. So thank you. Where can people find everyone?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach me with marketing questions or personal brand questions on there.
Okay, awesome. Elena Remoundos, but we will make sure that there is a link so that you guys can find her, because it's important. Okay, thank you so much, Elena. So we're back with some really good ideas. And Elena, for anyone who is their personal brand, or is maybe listening to all this and being like, there's so much I have to do, what are some good places for them to start to develop that?
That's such a good question, because I think if you were even to Google right now, like, how do I do my personal brand? You'll probably get 17,000 different lists of the 18 steps. So don't be overwhelmed. I think there's at the core, I think most of these strategies have the same guts, let's say. But I would say today, the areas that you should really focus on are purpose and values. So I think that's the foundation of a personal brand that really then will help guide you into your voice. And then the whole personal brand really is your North Star when it comes to your brand and marketing strategy. So whether that's around your content strategy for social media, or a campaign that you want to do, or a promotion you want to run, the beauty with a brand, a personal brand or a brand strategy, is that you always look back to it when you the answer might not be as clear to you. Really, it's questions like, does this X, whatever you're doing, align with my purpose? Does it reflect my values? Is it authentic? And the fourth question I think that's really important in most cases is, will it matter to my audience? So I think even outside of, sometimes it's only considered in the scope of social media, but even sometimes when a partner approaches you or another brand approaches you to do something, thinking through and saying, at the end of the day, will it really matter to my audience, can be a really great qualifier in making the decisions that you might need to make for your brand. So talking about purpose and values, I think identifying what your purpose sometimes comes out of the exercise of establishing your values. You might already know your purpose, and sometimes getting there can be about asking yourself, what is the problem you solve? and what are you passionate about? So when you're looking at that question, what the problem you solve is external and what are you passionate about is internal. And then bringing those two things together can really actually help define what your purpose is, what your unique. It's finding that intersection and help developing at that point. Purpose and values are things that don't I don't want to say don't change, but they shouldn't really change. Even as you grow and you develop, there might be some minor tweaks, but the essence of it, the core of that should remain intact. Your objectives for the year might change, or other parts of your strategy may change, but your brand at its core shouldn't really, unless you decide to take a completely different path. But if that makes sense, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay, good. And then really on the values and figuring out your values, I think I mentioned this in the earlier session. I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. Dare to Lead is a must read in my opinion. And it really even helped me identify the exercises. And there's so many great resources that we can even share about. It's not, I think she has this amazing stat that says only 10% of companies actually live into their values. So you may at some point have worked for a company. I know I have, or you look at brands you admire, or they may be plastered all over their walls, but nobody within the company knows what they mean. They don't know how to actually, what they're supposed to do with them. And so I think the key learning from Brene Brown is it's all about living into your behavior, into your values, and it's really attaching a behavior to that value. So I even have an example here. Let's say we take the value of being easygoing. So for some people, that's important to them, being positive, down to earth, easygoing, fun. It could be a great one. When you attach a behavior to it, the behavior could even be, I approach any project and task with a sense of possibility and positivity. So that's a behavior to that value. Another behavior is I'm willing to embrace change. So you can see even from these two behaviors how interpreting that value changes. So hence why it's so important as you're working through your values is attaching the behaviors, because just being like, I'm down to earth and I'm fun, whether you decide to expand your team or you already work with a team, or you want to decide what partners to work with or what other brands to affiliate yourself with, fun can mean very different things to different people. So when you've distilled it down to a behavior, and they can be more robust. These were just like one-liners. It just helps to be able to live into it and in a unified and aligned way, ultimately, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, especially, I know with my brain, it's really easy sometimes to see where you're going, but you figure your way as you go. Whereas I think when you have a little bit more of a roadmap, it's easier for other people to see where you're going. If you have a team, or if you have, because they're not in your brain. So I think, would you say that kind of lines up with like your mission statement and things like that? Like your values is a part of that, or is it?
Yeah, I think your mission though can change with time, whereas the values shouldn't. So meaning, let's say for me, I'm a marketer and I run a team, and my team, although it's not the agency, we operate like an agency. So maybe the current mission is we produce content. I'm very simplifying this, but our vision, and so part of a deeper brand strategy or personal brand strategy is also writing out and working through the aspirational things. So your vision in 3 to 5 years, I've capped it at that. Some people like to go all the way to like my 20-year vision. Cool. So for me and my team, I have my personal brand that I've done this exercise. I've done it for my team. And the aspirational vision would eventually hopefully become the mission, if that makes sense. So what maybe today is just we create content, period. And maybe it becomes in 5 years, we want to be leading all the research and data collection and making decisions and creating content based on that. I'm just making things up right now. And the beauty of a vision though is that it should be as aspirational as possible. Like you should be shooting for the stars. You're trying to get there, and then you just adjust that every couple of years. And I think a strategic plan should be reviewed once a year. Obviously things happen. Look at 2020. I had a very different strategic plan starting in 2020 and where it ended. You have to adapt, but the values and the purpose remain the same. And in some cases, maybe someone's purpose did change with a global pandemic. Very, very well could have. I think there has to be nimbleness in all this. I don't think it's about being so strict and stringent to be like, this is my purpose, I'm never changing my purpose. It's about adapting, but you can't be changing your purpose every month. Like
Mhm.
once a month, you can't just be like, oh, you know what? Now I'm going to change my purpose to this, or no, that's why I think those things, give it a year, let it sink in. And you can dive into deeper things around surveying and auditing the environmental impacts to how that might be affecting your business, or financial or global impacts, like a pandemic affected so many people that maybe would have changed. But you don't need to do that. Hopefully we won't have another pandemic anytime soon. You don't have to do that so frequently.
Yeah.
Mission is a part of a strategy, a part of a brand strategy, and it would change, but I think purpose and value remain
Stay the same.
constant. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually, I don't know where I got this, but I love the idea of it's almost like your purpose is the same, but the vehicle can change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And I
Yeah.
think that's something for people to realize, because they can get stuck and this is what I have to do and this is where I have
Yeah.
to be.
No, definitely. I think there's no right or wrong answer in a lot of this stuff. There's no, this is it. Here's your solution or your answer to all your problems. I really, in my mind's eye, I visualize this as I'm just creating more guardrails, and maybe I'm making it from a 17-lane highway. I'm bringing it down to maybe 4 lanes. So I'm moving around in there, but with this framework, you just have the guardrails. So the vehicle isn't veering all the way off. And all of a sudden you start at the beginning of the year saying, well, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And you didn't have any of these things really filled out. And then you're just all over the place. So I think they're guidelines, they're the guardrails. They're just there to help support you, so that you're also not exhausting yourself constantly with over analyzing, overthinking, that. So you do this work at this stage and you sit with it, I think, for a year really, and you test it out. And then, like, as I said, you revisit some of these things on an annual basis, or 6 months maybe, and you adjust. But it just takes away that layer with every decision you're trying to make in your business or your career, of running through all the list of those things every time to say, is this the right decision for me, or am I going in the right direction? By having these parts of your brand developed and established and true to you and authentic or to your business, it just helps make those decisions and just moving around and navigating through your day to day, I think, just so much easier, honestly. And I can say for me personally, I've experienced that, where I have gone from the 17-lane highway all over the place all the time, with every big or small decision having to run through all of this stuff, to then just being like, doing the work and being like, okay, no, I get it now. So things are coming at you and you're like, no, that doesn't, you don't have to be so like rude about it, but like, no,
Like it is.
no, that doesn't align. I'm sorry. Or that doesn't work for my audience, or that's doesn't align or sync up with my values. Sorry. But just, it's easier. And I think it's just, it's a filtering tool really in your everyday. And so whether you work for another company, you work for yourself, we already have so many things every day that we have to make decisions on. So I think it's just, and it also means on making the decisions on who you choose to work with too. It's not just about where you're taking your business. And I can say from my own experience building teams, without having very strong values for what the department and the team does, now looking back, I can see individuals that we brought in that were so misaligned on the core groups, let's say values, that it would have never worked. It was, now I see it as so clearly wrong. At the time, you're just getting frustrated because you're like, I brought this person in. Why isn't it working? Why can't it? And it can create like a year or years worth of frustration. And it truly was just a misalignment in values, where it would have never worked. That person would have probably been happy somewhere else. We would have been happier without that person, honestly. And so it's those little things. So it's a filtering system. I think that, I don't know when values became a buzzword, and then I think companies just decided to do, the big guys all did it and they had them splattered all over everywhere, but as they don't use them to their full capacity. And I think, I'm sure others, but for me, Brene Brown really brought that importance of what role values can play in your day to day when you've really done the work to figure them out. And I think for some people it'll spill into their personal lives as well, where
I seen that as you were talking, not that we're going to get into this, like, I know we can have conversations, but even in the people that you choose to date, or if you don't know your values and you're just shooting blanks out there, like, you're going to end up with anybody.
So I think sometimes when we do these exercises, when it's applied to our professional lives, because it almost sometimes makes more sense to do it for our professional lives, and you see it work. That's why I say you'll probably see it spill into your personal life, because you're going to be like, this made my life a little bit easier, or I'm navigating through my life a little bit, my professional life a little bit better, or with more peace. And then it trickles into your personal life as well, I think. Yeah. Totally. So I think all of these things, going back to the overarching topic of like personal brand, I think by establishing these things, they're really helping you as an individual. So whether, again, you are working for somebody else or you're working for yourself, they're helping you identify what value you're bringing to your potential customers or your consumers. And I think what this really can, I hope, prove to everybody is that you're more than your skills. We all have stories and we all have this worth that we can bring and value that we can bring. And so two people that can do the exact same thing can actually provide such different value to people. And you can monetize that and market that. And whether that's, again, it can be in the corporate world or it can be on an individual kind of entrepreneurial level. I think that's truly the power in a strong personal brand exercise, or just a brand exercise for that matter. It just helps you show you how you stand out, how you're different, how you can make money off of that.
Yeah. And that's what this whole idea with brand you is all about, is exactly, you summed it up beautifully. Like, know who you are, know your worth, know your identity, and don't try to be like everybody else. Take the strategies, take the steps, and make them yours. And I think that's what makes a strong personal brand, because you can't deviate from who you are if you know it.
Yeah, when you have like laser focus like that, it really does help. And I think it's just being disciplined enough to do the work. And then I call it, I didn't coin this, of course, but like it's a test and learn. So you roll it out, have some faith in it, in that brand and the strategy that comes from that brand work, and just check in on it every 6 months and adjust and pivot, or grow or move in a different direction. For a lot of people in the audience, I hope everyone will have some form of network or database that maybe it's your own clients or that you can actually leverage to even validate some of these things. And I think surveying people around you, either for your own personal brand to validate some things that you're saying, or if it's for your business, utilize those free tools to validate the work that you're doing or to help guide you even more. And then that even goes down to, I think there's been other sessions on the social media strategies, but it bleeds into all of that. And so same thing, you test and learn based on, you've established your purpose, your values, what your mission is, what you're going to focus on for the year. You build your brand pillars and your content pillars. You start putting stuff out there. People will tell you pretty quick if you're doing it right or wrong. And so that's where you can just pivot and adjust. But at least you've got a good framework and the guardrails are there that it wouldn't derail you. It wouldn't like unravel you to the point where you're like, I'm doing it all wrong, I'm not going to do anything, or whatever that your reaction may be to it. And yeah, it's just
in that one little thing that you said, there was so much like in there, jammed in there. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. We need to have a PDF, because just that little bit, I was like, oh yeah, pillars, guard. I was like, that's so good.
Sorry, I'm sorry if I'm talking too fast. So you guys can put it on a slower.
No, it was so good, but it just comes out of you because it's what you do.
Yeah, and so I'm really passionate, as you can tell. I think I've seen it work. And one thing I want to tell you all is, in my career, sometimes you can, whether I've been a business owner and I've worked in the corporate environment, and it's really easy to feel like I'm the only one doing it wrong in the world. I'm the only one making these mistakes. I'm the only one that doesn't know when it comes to brand and marketing specifically. And as my network grew and expanded and I started talking to people, I've talked to people at some of the biggest companies in the world, and they have the same problems. So it always made me feel better that I was like, you know what? They're still trying to figure it out. No one has fully figured this out. And so I think sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves to be like, oh my God, I haven't figured this out. I don't know what my brand is. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my values are. Take a deep breath. So many people around the world and so many companies are in that same boat. They've got uber huge budgets and they can't do it. So just consider that. It was a big learning for me. And I think that's what's really great about expanding your network and talking to your peers in the industry that you might be in, is you just get this valuable feedback and you get out of your bubble and your headspace of being like, it's just me. Oh no, and be easy on yourself. It's a difficult process. And especially for those that might be doing this as a personal branding exercise, it's tough. It's tough to do this for you when you're trying to look at yourself through that lens of a brand. It's just about being true to that process as much as possible, believing in your stories. There's so much power in everyone's stories. And so I think you said it earlier, Naomi, too, like sometimes we don't realize how impactful our individual stories may be. So in that personal brand or the branding, the stories and the storytelling around the brand are so important, because I think that's really what's connecting people. So a brand is it's the emotion connection that people make to what you're selling or the service you're providing. It's just how people feel when they're interacting with you or buying your product. And so storytelling is the number one thing in all that. So just really focusing on that too. Yeah.
So what's cool about that is that we had a story coach on here. So if you need help with that, it's confirmed, call her. And we can maybe work Elena into coaching too, because she's got a lot to offer. But I do really think for those of you who are on this journey, she's been so kind to say that she's on LinkedIn. And so I think it would be really valuable for you if there's something that she said that resonated with you and you want to take it a bit further, to message her. And she's got so much insight on that. So thank you so much, Elena. Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.